Today, the Below Average Joe's MMA show present the weekend recap. And we are here to talk about UFC San Antonio in Texas. Everything's bigger there, according to people that live in Texas, of course. But in the main event, Dominic, it was actually one of the smaller weight classes that took center stage. Bantamweight division, the most talented division in the UFC, where Cory Sandhagen reminded everyone, don't forget about me in this title mix as he beats Marlon Vera. We'll also talk about Holly Holm at 41 years old, starting a new contract, rewinding the clock back to her days as a title champion. And we'll give our first impressions of PFL Europe. All this and more, and it all starts right now. Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for joining us for this recap edition of the show. We are your hosting duo. I am the man on your right, Noah Baker, one half of this beloved duo, or infamous, hated. I don't know. It depends on the week. The man on your left, the man on my right, that's Dominic Salee. Hi, Dom. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Noah. Thanks for asking, as you always do so generously. It was a good weekend. I hope the same for you as we went down to well, not literally went down to San Antonio, Texas, but you get the point, and went over to Europe a little bit. It was a fun weekend for MMA. How was it for you? How did it treat you, Noah?
I thought it was a great weekend for MMA. I mean, the UFC cards I felt like really delivered for the most part. A lot of exciting takeaways and just fights in general. PFL Europe had a ton of finishes throughout the card, and it was just a lot of fun to watch. Even in the boxing side of things, David Benavidez and Caleb Plant had a really good fight on Showtime pay per view Saturday night. Um, I had David Benavidez to win in rounds 7 through 12. And man, I mean, he had Caleb Plant hurt for especially like rounds 9 through 12, probably. Just couldn't ever get him out of there. But, it was a great fight. So, all in all, combat sports this weekend killed it. Dominic,
Mm.
you kind of feeling the same way?
Yes, I would have to agree. It was pretty solid down there in Texas. I didn't get to see all the PFL Europe card, but I saw you covering it, and I saw the main two fights. And it definitely delivered too. I didn't see the boxing, but I believe every word you say because you
Mm.
are the boxing man on this show. Let's ride.
Yeah, that's not a very high bar to set on this show when one half of the hosting duo does actively dislikes boxing. So,
Hmm.
um, but let's talk about that main event of UFC San Antonio, where Cory Sandhagen, like I said in the beginning, he reminded everyone, don't you forget about me. In the bantamweight title picture, we had been talking about Marab, Aljo Cejudo, Cheeto, Sugar Sean, and Cory Sandhagen comes in here, Dom, and puts on the most dominant split decision victory I've maybe ever seen. That's right, he wins it via split decision.
Yeah.
Um,
Mm.
and we'll just kind of start there, Dominic. We were hoping by the end of this, these obviously this time frame we're in, where you had Marab, Jan a couple weeks ago. Now you have Cheeto Sandhagen. We were kind of hoping for some clarity in this division, right? And we weren't sure if how it was going to come out, if we were still going to have way too many people, you know, in the title picture, in that discussion to fight for a title to make it work. Someone might get screwed here. But now that it's all said and done, the fight's taken place, all the words have been shared afterwards. Did we get that clarity we needed to move forward for the next 6, 7 months?
Oh, that's such a tough question. I feel like I want to say it's a little less murky, but like again, we have a division right now that has Sean O'Malley, Merab Dvalishvili, I always fuck his name up, and now Cory Sandhagen. That's three number one contenders. And it still feels like Marab of the three deserves the title shot most, but is least likely of the three to get a title shot. And Corey even called out Marab next. So maybe they did the clarity for themselves right there when he called out Marab, and then
Yeah.
Sean gets the winner of Henry and Aljo. So maybe, just maybe, there is a little bit of clarity. I'll say, at least for the fight, there was a little bit of clarity. It seemed that Cory, I kept thinking this watching all 5 rounds. Like, we have a man of this elite caliber, such a complete, well rounded mixed martial artist, and he's not a champion. He was actually 5th ranked going into last night in his division. If that doesn't tell you how good 135 pounds is, I don't know what else there is to say. So I'll say we've got a little bit more clarity, Noah.
I'm surprised because I think we are completely clear now. Like I think everything makes sense. I mean, obviously the fights haven't been booked,
Yeah.
but you literally said it. You got Aljo Cejudo. The winner of that fight will face Sean O'Malley. Sandhagen and Rob want to fight each other. Bam,
Mhm.
done. I mean, they
We
called
needed it.
for it.
Yeah.
I mean, Cory, to his credit, or maybe some people might think he's dumb for doing this, but I'll give him some credit. He said he didn't want to cherry pick a title shot. Marab, he thought was the most deserving, thought he was a beast, since Marab's obviously got a conflict of interest, if you want to call it that, in the title discussion because his buddy Aljo is the champion. Marab said he wanted to take on the next contender. So Cory said, let's go. And I will just say, I think that is that fight's insane. It's insane in
Fascinating.
terms
Yeah.
of pace and just style differences, though. But both guys they're completely different fighters, but both are
Mhm.
consistent in their pace they put on and their
Yeah.
ability to um, go the full 25 minutes without really slowing down at all. Marab does it with obviously the wrestling. Cory does it with the footwork and striking. And, to keep it on the fight that happened, though, Cory Sandhagen, I think, Dominic, this version of Cory Sandhagen is, he was already dangerous. He was already a
Yeah.
threat. But I think he's improved a lot. And you could see it, especially in the wrestling side. I
Mm.
know he showed this against Song Yadong, but for me anyway, sometimes it takes like 2 fights of seeing something like that to go, "Oh, okay, this is something he's really implementing." Like it happened in one fight. Okay, maybe it was just something that, showed up in that fight as a weakness of his opponent. But now we've seen it twice in a row where Sandhagen has been, he's a great striker, but he's outright been a mixed martial artist in these last 2 fights. Like he has actually really went for takedowns, secured them, done good ground and pound off the top. And because of that, Dominic, that's only going to help his striking. And I think it did here too. When you have a threat for a takedown,
Mhm.
it opens up the hands so much. So Cory Sandhagen looked fantastic here. I think he did remind a lot of people of the kind of potential he has, and not even just potential, but the kind of talent that he is. And it's just a constant reminder of how talent stacked this division is. And yeah, him versus Marab is an amazing fight. I hope we get it sooner than later. And then Sean O'Malley, whether people like it or not, he might be the least deserving of the three for all we know. I'd have to compare resumes, but it feels like Marab might be the most deserving. But if he doesn't want that shot, next guy up is Sean O'Malley. So
Does it
seems
feel
like
a
the,
little, sorry, does it
no,
feel a
go
little weird that, like, we haven't really heard much about Sean since,
ahead.
like, his last win, and he's just been kind of steadily in the background while all these other fights are taking place, yet he is going to be next for the title. It just feels weird. A guy with that big of a personality and stardom has been really quiet, which is a bit odd.
Well, I think because if you compare it to before the Yan fight, when he would have these, obviously time between fights, he was, it seemed like, still chirping a little bit,
Mhm.
still making waves in some ways. I think it's a sign that he knows where he stands. He doesn't
Yeah.
have to do all that to earn a title fight. I think he knows he's next. And
Mm.
this fight was just more than enough reason to go, okay, this is the right fight to make after Cejudo and Aljo go at it here in a couple months. So I think that's why you're not really hearing much about him. It's kind of like with Colby Covington, apparently, like
Yeah, true.
laid low,
Very true.
just popped up when it got basically confirmed. Yeah, I'm sure you'll see Sean pop up again, but it'll be when Dana says, he'll probably say, I don't make fights the night of the fight, and then you'll go, but Sean O'Malley's next after UFC 288 here in a couple months. So
Good point. Good point. Yeah, I'm just excited for the future of this division. It's so healthy. It's so just full of life with fresh faces. It's just a beautiful problem to have.
yeah, well, let me ask you about that because full of life is not a term I would use to describe Marlon Vera's performance Saturday. I think he would even say that himself. Felt like Marlon Vera looked pretty flat here.
Mhm.
Um, and I know, like, yes, I bet on Marlon Vera. I knew what I understand when you dig into some of the past fights, you see things like how he was down in both the Dominic Cruz, Frankie Edgar fights, and against Rob Font, he got nearly doubled in output, but obviously just landed the more impactful shots and was able to get a pretty clear decision victory that way. But you see these things, and it does kind of make you wonder, like, if he would be able to do that against someone of Cory Sandhagen's caliber, go down early, have his comeback, and either get a finish or win a decision outright. Well, here he just never got it going. He
Mhm.
he started out down, and again, just like everybody was waiting around round three,
Yep.
like, okay, here's where he's about to, be Cheeto. Marlon is about to become Cheeto right here.
Yep.
And it just never happened, Dom. It happened with about 15 seconds left in the entire fight. And it's puzzling. Sometimes this happens though. Like guys
Yeah.
just come in flat. They feel like they have a great training camp. They feel ready, the day of, and then it gets to like right when the fight's about to start, and you just don't have it. And Cory Sandhagen was one of the best versions of himself I had ever seen, maybe the absolute best. So if Marlon Vera was not at his best this night, he was not going to win this fight, and that's what happened. He got, in my opinion, he got swept on the cards. I had at 5-0 for
Yeah.
Sandhagen.
Yeah, as did I. Corey just had all the right, problems, and Marlon had no answers for those. It was weird because we are just, although we're used to seeing him down early, we are used to him seeing that second gear, pulling out that second gear, and then really just destroying his opponents from what it's been over this win streak, especially. And he just, I don't know, maybe the matter of mixing that already fighting down or backward style with Corey just wasn't a good match for him. He couldn't find the openings. He couldn't even really press forward on his gas pedal because Corey is always pressuring forward, as you alluded to earlier. I think it was just that kryptonite style of matchup. He couldn't get it rocking. I don't know what really even comes next for him. I'm not going to necessarily count him out, but it was pretty clear that, like, okay, he got that like legitimate top five opponent like in their prime right now, and he came up pretty short. So maybe there are a few red flags. A bounce back performance is very much needed, I think, to keep any hopes of that title run, title challenge type material for Marlon's career.
Well, what's interesting, and obviously this is coming from a guy who doesn't train, so maybe I'm missing something here, but I felt like where Corey was so much better than Marlon is stuff that Marlon could improve on pretty quick. It was the lateral movement. Like, don't get me wrong, I don't expect Cheeto to ever become near as quick on his feet as Cory Sandhagen. What I mean by the lateral movement specifically, anytime Marlon had a great moment, he had a good combination, landed clean, whatever it was, had an outburst, kind of backed Corey up. Corey would immediately get right back in his face and land something in return.
Mm,
And he was able to do that by using lateral movement and then obviously bouncing off that to get into the pocket and land a good shot. So really, anytime Marlon Vera had a moment, it was returned with a moment for Corey. Like he
yep.
never had like an actual sustained, um, what's the word? Like sustained period of where
Yep.
he was in control.
Mm,
So what I noticed is every time Sandhagen would either tag him or have his burst on Marlon, Marlon completely just started going backwards. Like there was no lateral movement in the game at all. So when you're just backpedaling to get out of the pocket, you're not able to really return with counter shots in that fashion. So that was the biggest thing for me was basically anytime Cory was throwing at Marlon, Marlon was not prepared to counter back or as soon as he's done, return fire. It wasn't there. He was playing defense so much of this fight, but offensively, I felt like he was flat.
Mhm.
Defensively, I thought he performed pretty well. Outside of I guess getting taken down in the first couple rounds, and even then, Cory didn't exactly, the most visibly damaging shot in those 2 rounds was Cheeto landed like something that cut
Yeah.
Cory, but obviously I'm not saying that as like a to give Cheeto that round, unlike one of our judges did probably. But um, with that being said, I guess you want to talk about the scorecard real quick? Just what I mean, we're that's pretty bad, right?
I think there's a problem in Texas.
Mm,
There every time that there's an event in Texas for the UFC, there's some fucked up scorecard, and it doesn't get better here. This was as clear as a 4-1, but in both of our opinions, a 5-0 for Cory Sandhagen as you can probably have. And we had a judge score rounds 3, 4, and 5 for Marlon Vera. When Bruce said the judge's name, which means that it's going to be a split, I literally went from relaxing, just ready to hear Cory's post fight, to sitting up and being like, "What the fuck?"
like,
And
oh
part of that's
no.
because like, oh well, maybe no, it's about to get at least his bet to hit gifted to him. That's what I was thinking too. But it's just terrible. Probably should take a year away from judging and just go back and practice. And really, there were kind of weird scorecards throughout the night. Nothing like exponentially bad, but this one, especially in a main event slot like this, in a fight of this importance, is terrible. I think I saw Aaron Bronstetter tweet out something about this specific judge. It was he had judged like 4 other fights or something total ever. Or he's like a novice, a really new judge,
Yeah.
and you put him in a main event of a top 5 matchup in the biggest division in the UFC right now. It's just bad. Bad look. Very bad look.
There was a lot of weird things with the judging this night. And I'm
Yeah.
not even talking about the scorecards, Dom, because I think I heard the word robbery thrown around for about 5 different fights on this card.
Yeah.
And which again, it's like the boy who cried wolf. It completely just undermines the actual value of that word. Make no mistake, scoring that main event for Marlon Vera is an outright robbery. Now, the right guy still got his hand raised, so I mean,
Yeah.
whatever. But like when I'm hearing this about Maycee, Barber, Andrea Lee, or there was a couple other fights earlier in the
Giles
card.
Parsons was
Yeah,
one.
like I'm just like rolling my eyes at this. Like, don't get me wrong, you can score that fight, either of those for the person who lost, but to act like it's a robbery, I
Right.
mean,
Right.
that was especially like Maycee Barber, Andrea Lee. Maycee Barber had a more um, controversial decision, in my opinion, in this winning streak she's been on with Miranda Maverick. And
Yes.
like this is
Yeah.
the one that people are really clinging to is like this robbery. It just doesn't make any sense to me. But the parts that were weird about the judging, Dom, like Dan Mergliotta was judging fights, and I think it was his first time judging fights since like '97.
Yeah.
I think the last UFC fight he had judged was Kevin Randleman and Boss Rutan
Wow.
back in 90. I think that's what I read on Twitter. I could be wrong, but guy that's not really known for judging, obviously a referee. I like
Yeah.
Big Dan, but it's just a weird thing. And then you have that fucking ref, that incompetent ref from the night before who
Yeah.
was refing fights for Fury FC, I
Mm.
believe. Uh, there was whispers that he was going to be refing fights during UFC San Antonio that did not end up happening, but apparently he was judging fights. So again, just love that we're keeping people like that around. Not that I would ever advocate for someone to lose their job, but when you almost cost someone their life, maybe you should. I don't know.
Yeah. Bad look.
Yeah. Anything for Marlon Vera you'd like to see him do next? Like, is there any specific matchup that kind of sticks out to you?
Mm, honestly, no. It would be kind of cool, actually. I think maybe the winner of Ricky Simone and Song Yadong maybe fight
Mm.
Marlon Vera, something like that. But he needs to just take a step back. I think when you get outclassed like this against a title contender, you probably shouldn't fight another title contender immediately following. So
I mean, a Peter Yan fight seems kind of intriguing,
Oh yeah,
doesn't it?
that would make sense. Two guys
Also,
coming off
a
loses.
lot of stakes in that one
Yeah.
because both guys in need of some positive momentum. But that Song Yadong fight would be interesting if he could beat Ricky Simone because they have a history. They actually fought Marlon Vera and Song Yadong, that is, on I think it was the second COVID card. I believe it was Walt
Wow.
Harris, Alistair Overeem. Um, and it was a pretty clear decision victory for Marlon Vera, but it got scored for Song Yadong. So there is some history there.
Man, it fits well with our judging as well.
Well, and
So
also
perfect.
that was it was also a weird one where that fight was at 145 pounds, I believe, instead of
Okay.
135. So
Okay. Okay.
some weird stuff, but there is some history there with those two. So be interesting.
Yeah.
We can move on to the rest of UFC San Antonio, Dom, and I will open the floor to you. And I'm feeling just as good as I was last week. So main card prelims, it don't matter. Where does your mind go first, good sir?
Oh, my mind is kind of everywhere with this card because there's some sneaky good fights. There were some that were like lackluster. There were some takeaways, I feel like. So I feel like I should probably just start with Holly Holm, the 41-year-old former
Yeah.
champion, victorious in the co-main event against Yana Santos, back in the win column. First time she had fought in quite some time. Just signed a new deal, as we talked about on Friday's show, and it's crazy to me that at 41 years old, you can still see Holly improving aspects of her game and
Mm.
recognizing when to use these new aspects of her game. Because on the feet, she probably should have outstruck Yana much more than what she did. She didn't really have a ton of success on the feet because I felt like over the course of 3 rounds, she keeps it standing and has an Irene Aldana type performance, to be honest. But no, instead, she chooses to grapple Yana Santos' huge advantage in the rounds 2 and 3. Arguably, you could score both a 10-8, but definitely probably the second one, I think, had more damage. I
Yeah,
don't remember.
I think one judge gave her a 10-8 for
Yeah.
that round.
But she just looked really good, man. And you're not supposed to keep getting better and better at 41, but she is. So I don't know if she's going to be a champion again or whatnot. But this women's bantamweight division doesn't really paint a good picture either because you never really know what's coming next. So don't be surprised, people, if Holly finds herself in a title opportunity in her next fight. But I just think it has to be said just how impressive it is for her to keep winning at a high level and getting better at this point in her career when she's already done all these accomplishments in boxing, become a champion, had one of the biggest upsets in UFC history. It's impressive stuff. And she wants to be active too because she's
Mm.
had kind of stints of inactivity. You got to think with this new deal, maybe she sticks to that injury free, of course, it has to happen. So I'm just excited for it, honestly.
Respectfully, I'm a little surprised by that assessment of this fight because in my opinion, like, don't get me wrong, I have a ton of respect for Holly Holm to still be doing it at a high level at her age. But I mean, could she have I mean, she was handed by Yana Santos like her easiest fight probably in her UFC career because Yana Santos had one of the more puzzling performances, probably the most puzzling of the night, Dominic. I mean, she basically bum rushed her multiple times throughout the fight with no clear real plan of attack except to clinch her up. That
Hmm.
was it. There was no offense really planned at all. It was she saw it work, I guess, in Holly Holm's last fight,
Yeah.
and Santos thought that was her path to victory. So basically, she bum rushed her, and Holly had no real choice but to use wrestling to kind of get her a win. But if my takeaway is not that like Holly Holm is, you know, still like this championship caliber fighter, my takeaway is that boy, this division is rough
Mm.
because Yana Santos was ranked number 6 here. And I don't mean to disrespect her because she's a solid fighter, but I mean, Dom, that was pretty rough looking. And then it's just like, yes, Holly Holm is very good, but Holly Holm should not be in the place she's in at her age. It just doesn't happen.
Mm.
So if this division were really up to par with, in my opinion, women's flyweight or even women's strawweight, I don't think Holly Holm would be in the same position she's
And
in.
she is. Yeah.
So don't get me wrong, I get your point. Like all respect to her, she did it in a fashion we're not exactly used to seeing from her. But also, I mean, Yana Santos was begging to be finished in this fight too. Holly Holm had her in mount for it felt like I think Spinning Backfist even tweeted it was like 7 minutes. It felt like of this fight, which is probably not the exact number. I'm sure that's an exaggeration, but she had. I mean, I know she's never had a submission in her MMA career, Dom, but like the arm was just sitting there waiting
Mm,
to be armbarred. Like you're just sitting there, kind of going like, man, even when someone is begging to be finished, it feels like Holly just can't seem to get a finish in her career outside of Ronda Rousey. Like I think that's just
yeah.
unfortunately how her style is. She just kind of I think she was playing it pretty safe here when I think she could have really, really pressed the gas and gotten her out of here much quicker. That's my opinion.
Yeah. What do you think could come next for her in a division like this right now? Or does it matter? Like, what? We haven't heard anything about who's getting a
Mm.
title opportunity. So I guess that's a problem. Because, like, if Rocky gets the next title shot, I think you do Holly and Juliana. That would be a good fight. Two people that haven't fought. But if Juliana gets the rematch again, do we want to see Holly and Raquel Pennington fight again? I'm pretty sure they've already fought each other. Holly's
Yeah, they
already
were
fight Ketlin
the
Vieira. She's already fought Aldana.
they
So
were the co-main of the Cowboy
yeah,
Connor card back in the
yeah,
day. So I mean, I really don't care who she fights next, to be honest with you. But I guess under what you just, I mean, I think the most likely next challenger for Nunes is probably Irene Aldana. I mean, I think she'd probably get it over Raquel or Pena at this point. But it wouldn't surprise me either if Pena got the shot. I really don't think Raquel's getting the next shot. I think she's less likely to. And considering none of those fights that Holly had with like Rocky or whoever had a lot of, there wasn't like a ton of hype for it. It's not like it
mm,
was some big fight. I don't think the UFC would have an issue with running it back just because it kind of makes sense at where they stand in the division right now. But again, I feel like we're just kind of rearranging chairs here. Like we're just
hmm,
like rearranging the same furniture. It's like when they fought back in the beginning of 2020, I feel like they were in a pretty similar position to where they are now. It's like this division's not moving
not at
like
all.
at all. And
Yeah,
I that's why I don't even mind if Juliana gets a third shot with Nunes because it's like at least that fight, there's 1-1 there. At least there's
yeah,
some story to it. Like
yeah,
Aldana, I understand the reason to probably give it to her, especially with the fact that Mexican MMA champions have been
yeah,
so successful this year. There is something there. But also, you look at what Holly Holm just did to Aldana a couple years ago, and it's like, should you really be giving her a title fight? Like when Holly did that to her, I don't know. I mean, maybe it's been long enough ago now where Irene just has improved enough to earn it. But it's just a weird spot for this division right now, and that was more what it was going through my head than sort of any sort of real positive takeaways for Holly Holm. She got the win. That's good. Wouldn't mind to see her box, if that's something she wants to do with the UFC do start a boxing promotion.
hmm.
But it just I couldn't help but just think more about the lack of depth in this division.
Oh yeah, I understand.
Nate Landwehr, I think he was one of the show stealers of the night. Dominic, he gets the second round submission over Austin Lingo. Landwehr started off, a little very patient version of Nate Landwehr here for a while. A much more reserved version of, especially what we saw against David Onama. I
Uh,
mean, that guy was like just out of his mind. Here, he actually, I felt like, came in looking to get a finish, looking to get a win. Yes, in an entertaining fashion, but it seemed like something after that Onama fight. It's like he earned this credibility, this respect with the fans and with probably the UFC. And he's like, okay, I put on the show, but now I can actually make something out of this. I can actually kind of go on a run here.
yeah,
He's 34 years old. It's not like he's going to have a ton more chances to build that kind of momentum. So I think here he came in with the mindset of like, obviously I want to finish, I want to put on a show, but I don't want to do it at risk of losing either, which is kind
Mhm.
of what he did against David Onama at times. Like he would have dominant positions on the ground, get up and just tell David to get back up.
Yeah.
Here he played it very. I don't want to say safe. Like he played it pretty cool for the first round. Second round, man, he just again. I think his Austin Lingo just kind of tired out, and Landwehr was just able to pick him apart in round
Mhm.
two. And great moments on the mic afterward. Dominic said
Always.
he's got a highlight reel like Evil Knievel, swagger like Elvis Presley, and damn it if he's not handsome too.
Yeah, I'm looking at a picture of him right now. I gotta say, the guy's handsome. Well, he's even talking about how nice his biceps are. And Noah, the biggest thing for me, all the great mic work aside, he wants that fight with Alex Caceres. And ooh boy, I hope the UFC give it
Oh,
to him.
yeah,
That's a
yeah, yeah.
top 15 opportunity. That was the original booking on this card. And to be quite frank, after this type of performance where he looked the most complete that we've seen him, maybe there's something to be said here about Nate Landwehr. I'm not saying he's going to be a champion, but my golly, he can make a top 15 run, and I'm going to be here for it because it's going to be fun. I'm here to see him and Caceres, Bruce Leroy in the train. Nate, ooh, that's fun.
Well, I've really been following Nate since he first came into the UFC, and that's because MMA on Point actually did a video. I mean, this has been 3, 4 years ago now. You know, when he was making or going to make his debut, they had talked about him and how he really did have this really good career in the regional scene. Like he was a
Mm-hmm.
very highly regarded fighter there, very exciting fighter, still wild guy, but just this great guy that had some potential in the UFC to be really what you're seeing from him now.
Mm.
Well, obviously, it started out a little slow. Two
Yep.
of his first three fights, he gets knocked out in pretty quick fashion by flying knees, as Dominic pointed out on Friday. And I just like that since then, man, he's just really been able to go on a streak of wins, build some momentum. And now we're really seeing him come into who he was really going supposed to be. Again, like you said, I don't know how far he can take it, but I'm I'm here. I'm on the train until the wheels fall off, baby. So
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm just excited to see what's next for him. I would love if the UFC is really planning to go to Nashville. It would make a lot of sense to put
Mm.
him on that card, even though it's a quick turnaround. I mean, he's from Clarksville, Tennessee. It would make a ton of sense. Um, but who knows? That's a pretty quick turnaround. Dominic, what's the next fight you'd like to talk about?
I mean, I guess we kind of have to talk about Maycee and Andrea Lee. We already did a little bit, and it's basically, I mean, this was 11 versus 13. This was Maycee's chance to really make that statement because we had said well, I guess I kind of went out a little bit further than you, but that I really thought she was back and that the hype that she once has as, 19-year-old Maycee coming into the UFC, she had finally lived up to it and she was starting to deliver on that with 3 straight wins, getting better with each performance. Now, it's not that she necessarily looked bad against Andrea Lee, but takedown defense pretty glaring. Must say that. Now we saw it in the Miranda Maverick fight that it was there was a hole there, but last night I think even more glaring because you don't expect Andrea Lee to use grappling as much as someone like Miranda Maverick. And she did. I think she went 5 of 5, maybe even 6 for 6 on takedowns throughout
Mhm.
this fight. Maycee honestly couldn't even really get up as often. She was being aggressive, trying to land strikes from the bottom, but that only goes so far, even with the judging criteria being what it is. But when this fight was on the feet, she was landing the way more damaging strikes. She was putting out way more volume, pushing the pace. And that's why you can easily give this fight to Maycee if you're a judge. Like, there's no robbery here. Either woman could have won this fight. Honestly, kind of regret not betting on it to end via split decision. It went through my head. I usually pussy out of it, and I did this weekend, but that was free money looking back on it. But it is what it is. Maybe next time. I'm still where yeah, I'll say it. I'm still where I am on Maycee that I was on Friday, but I was expecting after this fight to be even higher
Hmm.
than I was on Friday.
Well,
So,
that's interesting.
it's a good win. It was a close win. She did what she had to do. She's not quite there with, obviously like Aaron Blanchfield and Manon Fior, even someone that just lost in Casey O'Neill, I feel like is still ahead of Maycee right now.
Hmm. That's interesting because how old is Maycee Barber? She 23,
24.
24. I mean, she's still so young.
Mhm.
And to be honest, Dominic, maybe I just think very highly of Andrea Lee, but I was very impressed by both of them in this
Mm,
fight. Like, both had their moments. And yes, obviously, what you pointed out about the weakness with the takedown defense is definitely there. Andrea Lee has shown that a little bit. Remember what she did to Antonina
mhm.
Shevchenko? But yeah, obviously, if you're someone who really is going to compete at the toppest of top levels, especially against someone like Aaron Blanchfield, you
Yep.
want to show them that you can't be put on your back. And she didn't quite do that here. But I will say, I thought she was pretty creative in some of her defense and even her offense from the bottom here. Now, I'm not saying that she should get into a pattern of using it because you don't want
Mm,
to be on your back. But remember that funky position in the first round where she was able to like tie up
yeah,
Andrea
the arm.
Lee's right arm in between her Macy's legs and then was
Yeah.
able to just get clean shots on her that way? I mean, just very creative kind of use of her guard there. So, um, I've just again I'm a little confused that people are. I saw it as soon as the scorecards got read off. I was like, oh, okay, Maycee Barber split decision win. I didn't really know who won the fight, but I was like, it
Yeah.
was a pretty. I felt like every round was very close with momentum
Mhm.
swings, and because of that, I was like, man, you could score this fight a million different ways.
Yep.
Then I see everybody talking about this 30-27 scorecard and how it's this robbery and that like the first round was a clear Andrea Lee round, and I just couldn't disagree more. Like, I think what people get in their head, Dominic, this is what I think, and maybe I'm just overanalyzing people here. I think people who thought that 30-27 was like terrible scorecard. I feel like they look at 30-27 as not being a close fight. But Dominic,
Right.
I think we know a 30-27 can be a very close fight. A
Mhm.
29-28 can be pretty. Yeah, there's a
It can
there's
be a landslide.
29-28s that feel
Yep.
more definitive than a 30-27 sometimes. That's just the way it goes. Like sometimes rounds are just super close. You can score it either way. And sometimes a judge is going to be like, well, I kind of leaned to one person all 3 rounds. And hey, here's another thing, guys. Sometimes the person who felt like they won the fight based off the moments they had, based off of, the most definitive damage done in the fight doesn't win because of the round system that we have in place that
Mm,
you look at like Volkanovski versus Makachev. Volkanovski clearly had the best round of the fight in round 5 and everybody kind of was wondering if he might win because of that. Well, no, because Islam had kind of built up a lead even though it was very close rounds. That's the way it goes. So I just feel like, again, boy who cried wolf on anybody who's yelling about that 30-27 scorecard. What did you think?
Yeah, I mean, I thought round 1 was the most clear because that was the round that Maycee didn't do as much damage as the others, so that's why I felt confident that out of all 3 rounds, I was like, "Okay, Lee won the first one. I can understand either or winning rounds 2 and 3." So, yeah, I mean, the 30-27, it is what it is. Anybody can score it for Maycee. I didn't agree with that scorecard, but again, it didn't necessarily impact who won because either girl could have won and it was a split. So, yeah, that's really all I have to say about it. It just goes to point out more of the judging problems going on in MMA in general and just specifically in Texas. Maybe not problems, but
Well,
there's
that's what
just
I'm saying. Like,
clear
what's the
confusion on
like?
like
I I
judging fights.
I mean, I agree on the main event like that, but like, I don't see what the issue is with that scorecard.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, damage goes first, and there really wasn't damage in the first round, so it should go to control time, which would be Andrea Lee. But a judge still scored that first round for Maycee. So there's clearly just an issue with people and judges understanding criteria, and we see it every week. I feel like in UFC or in MMA now, I think it's just an issue, but there's no real way to fix it, no matter how much knowledge and whatnot that there is. But again, nobody gets robbed in this fight.
What's next for you?
You caught me off guard. Main card, honestly, nothing. Prelims. Oh yeah, CJ Vergara. If you didn't see last night's fight, and you want to, or last night's fights, and you want to watch any of them, go watch CJ Vergara and Daniel Lacerda. Comeback of the year thus far through 3 months. CJ Vergara damn near getting finished in the last 2 minutes of round one, running away, running circles around the octagon, trying to avoid Daniel Lacerda. And dude, in the second round, what he was able to do was just unbelievable. You kind of felt it at the end of the first round that like Lacerda had wasted his gas tank. You felt the tide turn just a little bit. And as soon as round two started, it was all CJ Vergara. He takes Daniel down, does great groundwork, has the triangle choke in, gets the TKO. It was just an unbelievable performance. It's the beauty of the flyweight division. The card kicked off with 2 back-to-back flyweight bangers. That's why we love that division so very much. And he did it in front of his home crowd. You really can't have a better, well, you can definitely have a better homecoming, but you can't have a more exciting homecoming than CJ Vergara had last night.
Yeah, be prepared at the end of the year for the Beautiful Chaos
Yeah.
Award at the
Yeah.
Joeys because that one is a front runner right now. Now, that fight was fucking nuts, and
Yeah.
I thought it was a great fight, just a lot of fun to watch. And truthfully, Dom, I know Daniel Lacerda is 0-4 in the UFC, but damn it, I wouldn't mind if he got another
Keep
fight
him
because that
around.
dude. You know what's weird about him, man, is if you really watch each fight. He's never been out, as far as I know, if I can remember his 4 fights off the top of my head. I feel like he's had moments in every single one,
Yep.
and then he either gasses out like he did here, or he just gets caught in obviously a chaotic firefight. Like, truthfully, Dom, there might be a world where Daniel Lacerda is 4-0 in the
4-0.
UFC with 4 finishes and is
Yeah.
pushing for top 15 caliber. Like, I'm not even like it's sort of half joking. Like, obviously, he has some pretty big holes in this style where he really just goes for broke, and unfortunately, he's going broke each time. But man, I would not mind to see him get another shot at it. Or I would hope that maybe he goes to, LFA or somewhere, takes a couple fights, comes back in. Like that would be fine too. But I like that. I like both these guys. Vergara had a rough, kind of a mediocre start to his UFC career, but I liked him he was on the Contender Series, and I really liked him on there. And here, obviously it wasn't the cleanest of wins, but damn it, man. I mean, that guy just showed a lot of resolve in such a chaotic, first and second round.
I know both of these guys now have had 4 fights in the UFC, and none of them have had like, easy roads by any means. Like CJ's 2 losses are Ode Osborne and Tetsuro Taira. Tetsuro Taira, especially, is likely a
Yeah,
future
that's
champion at
true.
125 pounds, man. So, yeah, CJ didn't have a clean win, but he showed heart, he showed grit, he showed that he can face adversity and come out from on the other side. I hope they keep Daniel Lacerda, by the way,
Yeah.
too. Both he deserves another shot.
But the fact that they're flyweights, in a flyweight division that doesn't have like the amount of names that these
Mm,
other divisions have, just more reason to keep these guys around. I mean, obviously
right.
Vergara will be, but like Lacerda,
Yeah.
for the fact that he's put on nothing but bangers, keep him around.
Exactly. Exactly.
Let's talk about a little PFL Europe. That's right. Your American boys found a way.
Yeah.
Somehow, some way. Well, at least I found a way. Dominic seemed to have troubles with the way that I
Yeah.
found, but um, all in all, we're going to talk about the first impressions of PFL Europe because we were kind of wondering, and it did turn out, Dom, not broadcast in the United States
Yeah.
anywhere.
Yeah.
DAZN, of course, is the partner for the international markets. PFL regular season, which starts next week, which we'll be talking about then, is on ESPN Plus.
Mhm.
Challenger Series on Fubo TV.
Make it
I
make
mean, what
sense.
I'm curious your kind of thoughts there. Like, as far as PFL Europe first impressions, I feel like the lack of an American,
Yeah.
audience has to play a part in your kind of impressions of it, right?
Yeah, for sure, man. Like, we've talked about how the PFL feels like number 2. You can kind of go back and forth on it. I think they're firmly number 2, but then they do make weird decisions, and maybe it's contractual stuff that I just don't understand, and that could very well be the case. but having three different, very cool concepts, albeit on three different platforms, I feel like just holding them back from taking another step up and like the amount of eyeballs that can be on the product. The PFL has a good product with quality fighters, and they're different from the others. They stand out honestly more than any of the MMA promotions when you talk about the things that they do and the things that they implement into the game with the seasons and all that stuff. But if people in America, have to watch something on ESPN Plus, they have to buy Fubo. They can't watch PFL Europe, and PFL Europe is going to have much bigger players, I feel like, right now than what the Challenger Series would have, especially with women like Dakota Ducheva, who was in the main event. It was Simon Powell. I mean, these are really, really good prospects from a market that, yeah, the PFL is trying to break into, but your American audience should get to see them as well because they are more than likely going to be in the regular season of the PFL in 2024, more than likely. So that's kind of just the big problem for me as a fan, being that I want to see as much action as I can from the PFL, especially with PFL Europe. So it is what it is, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it sucks because we are Americans, so we don't get to watch it. But yeah, I guess that's one way to look at it. Like these guys, like Simeon Powell and Dakota Dicheva, will eventually make their way to the PFL, like the actual PFL regular season. But maybe they won't. Maybe they're really going to try to build this PFL Europe as like a separate entity, and maybe there won't be any crossover. But I don't know. I will just say for my takeaways, like I watched the whole card. I loved it. I mean, it was a lot in terms of presentation. There wasn't anything all that different
Mm-hmm.
about it. I will say you had Dan Hardy on commentary along with Stefan Struve actually,
Oh,
and
wow.
Sean O'Connell. Um, I thought they did a good job. Dan Hardy especially is great.
Oh, yeah.
Sean O'Connell always great for the PFL. Stefan Struve was what's weird about him is I felt like for for a couple fights I would kind of go, man, I feel like I haven't heard Stefan Struve talk very much. Like I felt like for his first outing, he was like kind of the third wheel of this
Yeah.
trio here. I have noticed he's been doing more work with BT Sport recently, but yeah, what'd you think of commentary? You thought it was pretty. I mean, you apparently you didn't. I don't know if you were listening to it because you didn't know Stefan Struve was
Yeah.
commentating.
That was news. But Dan Hardy, and he's like a big talking point for PFL
Right.
Europe. He's like, the focal point of leading this charge for them.
Well, yeah, he's
He
the head of what was it? Head of fighter relations or fighter
relations.
management or something. He's really like you're saying, a big player, a big figurehead in PFL Europe.
He's such an advocate for this sport, man, and growing it and making it safer. And he's such a brilliant mind to listen to, breaking down fights and commentate on fights. So I think it's actually huge that the PFL gets to have someone like him. It honestly, I think, even sucks for the UFC that they let him go and had that falling out that they did, because Dan Hardy is one of the most brilliant minds in this game right now. So that's a huge addition to the PFL's presentation and just their team. He's going to do good things for these fighters as well in that role that Noah talked about. It's just awesome.
Yeah. So yes, as the for the two car, you saw the I'm like having word vomit come out right now. So you saw Dakota Dicheva and Simeon Powell, right?
Yeah.
So I think for most people, especially American audiences, those were the potential of those two is kind of the intrigue to
Yeah.
watch this in the first place. Like they kind of got their debut. They did fight like on one of the later
Yeah.
PFL season cards last year. So, we kind of got to see them, and then the PFL's like, actually, you're not going to get to see them ever again because they're in
Yeah.
Europe and we're not showing in America. So I feel like they lived up. They had pretty dominant performances. Obviously, Dakota Dicheva was like a minus 1800
Yeah.
for this fight,
She's
which,
good,
as
man.
I like to say, is higher odds than Kayla. Than there were fights during Challenger Series that were pre-recorded, and somehow we're still having odds, for them on DraftKings, and those winners of those fights had lower odds to win than Dakota
Yeah.
Dicheva had here.
At a live
People who
event.
you
Yeah.
knew were going to win. So
Yeah. Yeah.
That 3-minute 52-second rear naked choke submission, not much of a surprise. Simeon Powell took a little bit longer. It did go into the second round, but I thought both looked great. And, I think especially for Dakota Dicheva, it's important because that division just
Yep.
needs that kind of face to carry it right now for PFL,
Yep.
women's flyweight. I mean, I know it's PFL Europe, but hopefully, like you said, that the plan is to kind of bring some of those people over eventually, and this will almost become a European version of Challenger Series. I don't know. So,
Yeah.
your thoughts on those two? Anything you want to add?
No, I mean, especially for Dakota, I just remember watching both of her first two fights in the PFL and those undercards, and you just kind of know that she's a special talent. 24 years old, 8-0, 7 finishes, very good character, like confident on the mic. Just she kind of fits that mold of a UK fighter, and she's really, really good, man. And she can spearhead and lead the charge for the PFL starting a women's flyweight division into the season format. I know it's not happening this year. Hopefully, it can happen in 2024. She probably runs away with this whole PFL Europe thing, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, there's probably a good chance for that. I will just mention on the undercard underneath those two. Obviously, he's going to be the other takeaway here, but Bantamweight's Lewis McGrillen. I believe he was 23 years old. This kid looks like something fierce, man. I like this kid a lot. And there was a lot of people that really stood out on this card. I mean, there was a ton of finishes on here. I mean, I feel for you, Dominic, that you didn't get to watch all this because I mean there were really some just solid finishes throughout, and yeah, I liked what I saw for PFL Europe's first card. I think they really nailed it here, and obviously presentation wise, you kind of knew what to expect.
Mm-hmm.
So really, what it comes down to is how did the fights deliver, and I thought they did fully. So
Yep.
great job for them.
Perfect.
Now let's move on to the below average bet slip, Dominic. How did we do this week?
I went 1-2. I had a parlay obviously fall out. Well, wait, no, not a parlay fall out. I had Manuel Torres fall out because the fight got canceled. Then I added a parlay with Manel Kopp, and then a couple other fights to go inside the distance. That one didn't hit anyway, and Manel Kopp got off the card, so that was just great. But I did hit the ladies' night parlay, Holly Holm and Maycee Barber. Had to squeeze the ass cheeks for the split decision, but I'll take it however I can get it. I went minus 105. I didn't like that I had to resort to having 3 parlays after the Manuel Torres fight fell out, but it is what it is. I'm glad there's no UFC to bet on because I'm on a cold streak. Now, I will, at least I plan to be doing plays for Bellator this weekend and PFL, the first event of the season. Hopefully, I can do good there, but I want to come back with a vengeance for UFC 287 April 8th.
Yeah, do you have the our combined score, like our combined
It would be plus 1.16 units.
Okay, you know what? I mean, I'm sorry that obviously you didn't have the best of weeks, but obviously when a fight falls out and you already had like a low amount of plays to
Yeah.
begin with. I mean,
Yeah.
I get it. It's not a fun situation to be in. I lost a play as well for the Manel Kopp Alex Perez fight, which I plan to talk about right now. But before I do, what was weird, Dom, was I went 3-0 on parlays. Like
I
parlays are
saw,
nailed,
man.
but I only went 1-3 on my singles. So obviously some work to do there. But it's this is why again I'm really liking any parlay I do, it's gotta be plus money. And this is why, because when you find yourself 4-3, you have 4 winning bets, 3 losing bets on the night, but I still go positive over 2 units, for myself. That that's big. Like if you're able to hit just a couple big, not big, but a couple decent plus money
Mhm.
parlays or plus money bets. Every bet I hit was plus money on
I was
here.
about to say that. Yep, because even
So
Durayev
yeah,
was.
so that's why that's why it's just like I don't know. It really helps because especially because I'm doing a lot of plays,
Yep, yep,
really don't want to fall into what I kind of happened to me last year, which was where most of my plays were minus money. And then once you lose a couple, you're just so behind and it's hard to make up that ground. So,
exactly. Yep.
but as far as the actual specifics here for fights that we hadn't already talked about, Altamirano Salvador under 2.5 at minus 135. didn't ever really feel like it was coming that close to a finish. I just wanted to acknowledge this fight, Dominic, because this was fun to watch. But boy, boy, was this fight kind of shit at the same time. Did you kind of get that same impression?
It's one of those ones that is a blast to watch, but not from a technical perspective.
Yeah, like boy, man. I mean, whew. Like, and I like Altamirano. I think that this might not have been his like the best showcase of his
Right.
talent. Like, I think he might be better than this.
Yeah.
But Salvador,
Dude.
oof. I mean, that was wild stuff. Um, I was able, by the way, the only bet that really got added from when we talked Friday, if anybody didn't go to our Twitter and look, I did have a PFL Europe parlay, so that's why I went 3-0 on parlays. But let's Manel Cop, Alex Perez, Dom. So in the time between when this fight got announced that it was taken out, and we even talked about this on Friday. I mean, everybody's kind of been talking about Alex Perez, the streak he's been on, the fight's not making it. So I think anybody who was discussing this fight going in probably had to acknowledge that, like, well, hopefully it makes it. But we did acknowledge that, so we kind of deserve some points there, right? But
Yeah.
even with that, I even put the little clip on my Twitter. I still was so excited for it. I said inject it into my veins, and then didn't happen.
Yeah.
Just a few hours before the fight was supposed to take place, it was off the card. Medical issue with Alex Perez. Manel Cop goes on Twitter, puts out this whole big statement that really, I mean, just was like, oof. I mean, he was really digging
He was roasting his
into
DNA, dog.
yeah, Alex Perez. Yeah, his whole entire family tree was
Yeah.
feeling that one, man. And then Alex Perez actually came out and said
Yeah.
that it was apparently a what was it?
Seizure.
Yeah, seizure that causes it. He said it was not related to the weight cut.
Mm-hmm. Man.
Is it okay? I really don't want to go out of bounds here. Not that I don't believe what happened. I mean, sure, that's really what happened. That it was a seizure and everything, but I'm not sure if I fully believe it had nothing to do with the weight cut.
Mm.
Is that fair?
I think that's fair to at least have that thought because he's had problems with the weight cut, in the past. And
Yeah.
it's just I don't know all the like scientific shit. I'm sure a seizure can be caused by all of the draining of the kidneys and the
Yeah.
dehydration and all that stuff. That's scary shit, man. It's like really, and it just such bad luck too for Alex Perez. Even if it is weight cut
Yeah.
related, like this guy can't catch a break. What's that now? Nine
That's
canceled
9
fights.
fights. 9 fights since 2021.
He's fought one time since he challenged for the title. That's it. That's crazy.
Hasn't
Man.
he or has he fought? Yeah, yeah, I guess that is right, isn't it?
Yeah. And he's made it to fight day like twice and then had a fight fall out. Even Manel Cop, this is the second time it's happened to him on weigh-in day or fight day where his opponent has had to pull out of a fight. So like obviously there was nothing physically bad that happened to Manel, but you have to feel for him too. This is a guy that
Right.
went through a camp, trained, cut the weight, was ready. They had a little fiery face-off, by the way. Don't know what that
Yeah.
was all about at weigh-ins. And then he gets an opportunity pulled out from under the rug by him as well. So it's just it's so
That
it's
what did
scary
you
though.
did you hear what Cop's quote was with the face off? Like what he
No, I
said?
did not understand why they did
Oh,
that.
so he was accusing Alex Perez of sending in spies into his camp.
Oh, okay.
He said, yeah, like, I think the words he were using on stage was like, "I know about your spies," like, and stuff, and I like that's why he was so angry, I guess. So
All righty. Wow.
yeah, so that's what it has to do with, which is so bizarre. Like, can we just think about what a weird, like, sending spies into gym? But Dominic, this is brought up. Like, I swear, at least once every couple of years, there's a fight that has this as part of the drama for it. Like I remember Rashad Evans and John Jones back in the day. That was I think Rashad had accused John of sending in spies to his camp or something like that. So
I mean, if you really think about it, it is like very possible to do. Outside like
yeah,
in NFL, it's hard to have someone go sneak into a stadium and watch the team practice. But in MMA, if you just know a guy, you're like, hey, this is where they train. Go to the gym, get a workout for the day, preview what that gym is. Like you're a new member. Oh, by
yeah,
the way, there's Manel Cop over there training for his fight against me. Like it is possible, I guess.
yeah. So as far as that, like, and when I say that about the seizure being caused by the wake up, like obviously I don't know, you're right. I'm not a doctor. I don't. So I'm not like going out on. I'm not going out and telling everybody like, don't believe what Alex Perez says. This was definitely caused by the weight cut. I'm just saying personally, I think this pattern, and I
Right,
know
the
not all
history.
those fights are on him,
Hmm.
but there's a pattern here. So the fact that once again something very seriously medically pops up after you just had another weight cut, I have a hard time believing that they're not at all connected.
Yeah,
I know that's what he's going to say because obviously he probably does not. He probably feels pretty scared that he's going to, potentially be cut or
yeah,
something from this. And,
yeah,
I would hope that that wouldn't happen, but I would also hope that here's the problem, Dom, is as much as I want to feel for Alex Perez, you know who I feel more for? These times that he's fallen out, that it's actually on him. I feel for the people he's fighting who
yeah.
aren't getting the paydays. That's who I
Right.
feel for.
Yeah,
And this is a whole culture issue in the sport with the whole massive cutting,
yeah.
massive weight cuts and stuff. And I don't know how to get rid of it. I don't know what the answer is, but it's pretty clear that he should not be fighting at 125 pounds, I think.
Yeah, yeah.
I think there's enough evidence to prove that this guy just can't consistently make 125. And when
And if
he
he does, it hinders him.
and it is at a complete risk of his personal health.
Yeah, and you don't want that.
It seems like there's two choices here. You move up or you move out.
Yeah. Let's hope for the
But with
best.
that being said, yeah, that bet fell out. I think I had it to not go to round 3.
I think so. Yeah.
Um, but everything else, I mean, Pineda Lutz under 2.5. Daniel Pineda looked great.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
good for him. It's been a
Oh
couple
yeah.
years.
I'm actually glad you brought that up. I am gonna take a hiatus from betting against people returning from like over a year long layoff because now that's back to back weeks where I've gotten my ass busted for betting on someone. It was first it was Juliana Miller last week to beat Veronica Hardy because she had been out for 3 years, and I just thought Juliana was better. That blew up in my face. Veronica got exponentially better, and even yesterday, Pineda looked pretty complete. Wasn't as wild as usual, but still found a way to get a finish. I'm gonna step back from them hiatus fighters for now.
Mm. I'm glad to see that you're still working, Dom. Even when
Yeah.
you're like you don't get discouraged, you're making changes, you're trying to fix if something's broken
Hmm.
here. I've been in your spot.
Yeah, it's not
I've
fun.
been the guy down.
Yeah.
I never did find an answer, Dom, except to take 3 months off,
Yeah.
eat some chicken wings, and now all of a sudden I'm winning every week. It's
Could be the difference.
sometimes sometimes good things happen to bad people, and that's what happened to me. So um
I see what you did there.
so let's move on to our final segment of the show. The only segment we could end on.
Yeah.
The pressure is on Dom because it is time for his closing statement.
Yeah. So after days and days and days of rain and rain and rain, inches and inches of it. Noah, what'd you say? You were going to get 5 inches, I think, something like that
That
in
was the
Indiana.
rumor. That was the whispers by the cleaning lady. That's that's by the way. Anytime I have anything weather related to bring up, that's because the lady. There's an older lady who comes around and collects our trash at work.
Okay.
She's the one that tells me. So I'm
Okay.
not getting
That's
it
your.
from the actual weather. She said we were supposed to get 5 inches of rain. That's why
And what she says goes.
well, I just assume I'm like, well, she probably watches the news. I don't. So I mean, I'm just gonna assume she's right.
Yeah, and don't get it wrong, 5 inches is a lot. So tonight the weather is really, really nice.
Mm.
It's starting to clear. The spring is in the air, and I believe Big Dave is pulling out the grill. Okay, for one of the
Oh,
first times for the spring.
okay. It's getting
What?
serious.
What? And now we've talked about the meat, the medium well, and stuff with the steaks. So it's nothing like that necessarily. But what is Noah? You're pulling out the grill, or Big Todd's pulling out the grill. Whoever for the first time of the spring. What's the ideal lineup? What's on that grill? What's on your plate that first cookout of the year? What is it?
Well, it's actually Big Rob. That was my
Okay,
stepdad.
he's the grill master.
He's the grill master. No disrespect to Big Todd. Big Todd also can do some things on the
Hmm.
grill, but I've never met anybody who does it better than Big Rob.
Okay, okay.
So the lineup it can be vast, it can be small. but the real consistents are the burgers and dogs, and
Gotta be.
usually we do cheese brats, and I think that those are the best way
Ooh.
to go. And beer brats, but I prefer
Yeah.
cheese brats.
Yeah.
He cooks the burgers with the cheese, or actually not with no cheese on it, which I think is actually better. I prefer to put the cheese on after it's been
After.
grilled.
Yes.
I think
Yeah.
it's a nice touch. I don't know why. I just
Just
think it tastes
melts.
better. I think my dad cooks with the cheese on, and I think
Mm.
that maybe holds him back sometimes. Again, Dad, if you're watching, I feel like this is not being compared to the follow up is not
Yeah.
always
Yeah.
the kindest thing to do. But um, so I'm a big hot dog, ketchup and mustard,
Again. Okay.
burgers,
Okay.
cheese, and mayonnaise.
That's it. Simple enough.
Well, I mean, it depends on what we have because sometimes he'll cut up some onions and some
Mm.
tomatoes. I don't do tomatoes, but the onions are like the onion rings, kind of
Mhm.
thing.
Mhm.
Sometimes I maybe will put some onion on it, or trying to think what else. They'll have the big pickle spears, but I hate putting big pickle spears on my burger because it's hard
Mhm.
to really chew off. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. But typically I keep it pretty plain for when we're grilling out. As far as sides go, massive macaroni salad guy and potato
Oh.
salad guy.
Mm.
A lot of times after that, there's some chips, of any kind. Trying to think if there's anything I'm missing there, but I mean that's really the consistence for me. But it can change, it can vary. Grilling out is like my favorite thing to
Oh.
be a part of.
It's just like the sign that the weather is just beautiful.
Yeah.
You're with the family, you're with the friends, the smells. Oh man, I gotta go probably. It's usually hot dogs and burgers for sure. Then it, like you said, the variants comes in because sometimes we'll throw some chicken on and then we'll do it with barbecue or whatever, like Famous Dave's, or he'll throw a steak on here and there. But I always am going to have burger, hot dog, just ketchup. I've never been big on mustard. I can't get past the bitterness taste. I know, I know.
Mm.
What we've done recently with the burgers, we actually bought the Wahlburgers sauce that they use at their restaurants. That is some good stuff, man. I'll throw
What
that
is
on
it?
the. Oh man, how would I even describe it?
Is it
It's
at
got to
all
be.
comparable to like I don't know, King sauce
I
or
think if I were to compare it to anything to give you an idea, it would be like Cane's or like a Chick-fil-A style of
that means
sauce.
it's probably some form of like mayonnaise, honey
And
mustard
yeah,
mix thing or
ketchup.
something.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's really good. I've never been like, because obviously I'm used to doing it with chicken, but it's good on a burger. So I'll do that like top bun, ketchup bottom bun. I'm really picky with the garden on burgers, so I usually don't do much. Bacon, if it's available. I know you're not the
Mm.
biggest bacon guy. And sometimes I talk Big Dave into cracking the egg on the griddle, add
Oh
the egg onto the
man.
burger.
Yeah.
Oh, let that yolk just
I
all
don't
over.
like I don't like the noise I made when you said that
I
because
did.
I,
Mm.
I being it's not a great look to be the fat guy that's like coming his pants over the idea of an egg being put
Egg
on
on
a
a burger.
burger. I
It's
don't
game
even know
changer.
the last time I don't even know if I've ever actually had an egg on a burger, but anytime I've
Oh,
seen it,
dude,
it
dude.
looks amazing. But my family didn't grow up. The eggs were not like breakfast food in general was not a common
Yeah.
thing. Like,
Uh,
they say it's the most important meal of the day.
mm,
My parents said, fuck
mm.
that shit.
Yeah.
But no, I mean I ate a lot of cereal growing up, but that was like there wasn't like bacon and like all this stuff like that was never really in the house that much.
Dude, it's so good. That's actually my go-to burger is burger, egg, bacon, barbecue sauce, buns, toasted for a few seconds on the
Interesting.
grill. Oh my goodness gracious. That's my
Interesting choice
favorite.
with the barbecue sauce. I
Mm,
like barbecue sauce, but not typically something I put on my burgers. But
yeah. Yeah.
again, I'm talking like these are homemade too. So
Yeah.
when I go out to restaurants, I'm more open to having that kind of stuff. But I usually keep it plain. Just I'm kind of lazy, and also like I'm a big just mayo guy, so like
Mm.
that adds enough of a flavor to me.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it, Noah.
Yeah. I don't think I really have anything for today's closing statements. I'm happy Dom was able to,
I felt the
show
pressure. Yeah.
up. I'm sure you did. Um, but yeah, my name's Noah Baker. That's Dominic Slee. We are but just two of the below average shows, and we'll see you guys on Friday.